Hi and welcome to Mars Moon Space today. I have a very special VIP guest with me that I have been looking so much forward to talk to. As many of you that knows me know that I have a huge interest in life in the universe, in UFOs and NASA and you know, all the stuff about the unexplained, about UFOs, aliens and so on and so on. Enough about me. Let me present to you the lovely Donna Hare that is with us here today. Hello, Donna, and welcome.
Hi, Thomas. How are you, Thomas? It's good being here.
Oh, I am so honored to have you here.
Thank you. That makes me feel good. It does.
I have seen a lot of your videos, and I've been looking forward to meet you personally here. It's a big honor for me. But Donna, let's start from the beginning. You were working for NASA since the 60s.
Yes, definitely. Well, I worked for Philco Ford, which was a contractor that worked off-site, but we did work on-site. We did the work for NASA, part of the work for NASA.
What kind of work? Sorry to interrupt.
Well, I started to work there right out of high school for this contractor, Philco Ford, and I was a file clerk, and I've always had the ability to draw well, so I thought I could draw these drawings, you know, I could see. So I applied in the drafting department, and they were full, so they had an opening in the graphics department, which did the 10 by 20 foot screen launch and landing slides. They did all the graphics by hand.
Yeah.
And so there was an opening there, and since it was such a unique job, you had to train on the job. A college degree would not have helped because it was so specialized, you had to learn on the job. So I went there, and I got a job after working as a file clerk for a little while. And I started watching what was being done, and I started doing it, a lot of graphic work. And so I was self-taught, except I did view other people's work. I had also viewed what had been done and took special note of how to do it, how to do the darkroom work on it, and just step by step.
That was the big question. You saw other people's work and what was done, and what was it that other people did?
Well, there was ways of compositing line work over grids and coming up with grids and doing paste up of verityping. Now, you got to remember, this was at a time computers were as big as a room. A laptop computer today has more ability than the first computer I worked on. As for user-friendly, I had to create my own fonts on the computer. I couldn't sit at a keyboard. I had to use a Graphicon pen to draw a line from one point to another point. It was so complex. I did read the manual to figure out how to do it. But what I'm saying is, originally, when we were doing this, everything was done by hand. The graphics were done by hand. Later on, they did start using computer drafting systems, but it wasn't until sometime later. And but we would do things like, instead of some things I drew with ink, but then the launch slides, I don't know if you've ever seen those, but the slides, they were, you'd see, well, it's a grid, algebraic grid, and you have the different lines, but it's all really a continuous line. Those were done, I had to use a pen. I had to etch on what they call scribe code. It was orange emulsion on the top, and then I had to make the pen too, to scratch it or lift it, and it was done on, I had to roll on this stone, and it was like very archaic. Make a pen to put in the hand holder and scribe it. You had to scribe the line on the emulsion, and you couldn't go all the way through the emulsion and nick the clear mylar, because then on the 10 by 20 foot screen, you'd have this huge break in the line.
Yeah.
So you couldn't, you had to have just the right touch. If you made a mistake, you had to start over. You couldn't opaque it out and start again.
Take one step back.
The scribe code, you know. So it was a very unique job, and like I say, because I had drawing abilities all my life, it was the finger dexterity they were really looking for to be able to do this. I could have had a college degree, and it couldn't have helped me do this job any better, because, actually, it would have caused me great problems if I'd have had a college degree. And this is why I say this. At the time, I was taking a few courses here and there. I was not serious about going to school, I guess, in college, but I hadn't taken algebra yet. Well, on these 10 by 20 foot screens, it's algebraic scales, of course. I didn't know algebra, and they had to train me I had to reverse everything in my mind. The numbers, the x coordinate, the y stayed the same pretty much because it's up and down, but I had to read everything backwards and do algebra backwards on the scale. And plot the course with little X's, and then use ship curves. And I mean,
it doesn't sound like an easy task always.
Well, it wasn't.
No.
But it was easier for me because I didn't know algebra. Now, when I finished up, the very last class I took was college algebra, because I passed everything else with A's and B's. I could not pass college algebra because I had learned it so reversal. Oh. I finally did. But it was a nightmare to unlearn something and relearn it. Yeah, so again, it was a very strange way of doing things, but you had to make contact with the film to make it perfect. They put it under pressurized thing. It was a very complex way of doing graphics. Today, you got computers, you can sit there and do it all on the computer.
It's so easy today, you can do everything, and
right. But it was everything. It was very archaic, very archaic. But that was, and then I did other jobs too. Not only the graphics for the control center, we did splashdown slides, what they call. We did moon landing slides. We did, plot boards, numbers. In the control center, you have those flight controller modules you sit at, and you have the TV screen there. Well, even the buttons, each flight controller had their own codes for each button that they wanted to use. So each flight controller, and there was two what they call MOCAs, two control centers, one on top of each other, but they only used one or the other. It's a backup. But you had to do hundreds and hundreds of these little chips that went into the buttons. And then you do, for the computer, we had real-time information coming back from the rockets all the time through the computers, and it was always feeding into their stuff. So what happened was, when they had the TV screen there, they had to have an outline, so that this real-time information could pop up in this outline. So we had to do the outlines for graphics for all of this stuff. And so it was like, I look back on it now, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know how in the world we did it. I know they've destroyed all the manuals. I don't think people know how to do it anymore. I mean, it's unbelievably lost. Lost.
Lost knowledge of a kind.
And they think a lot of back then in those days, they think the newer people today think in terms of what's easy to do today with computers and stuff. Back then they didn't have that. They, trust me, it was every letter had to be pasted up individually on everything. A Verityper, I had to type out my own type. And it wasn't even a typewriter. It was a wheel. I had to do. It's just, I look back on all of the work we did. I don't know how we did it. It was like, I don't know how it was done.
But you did it.
Yeah, because we always met our deadlines. So it was a very, I explained it one time to not a flight controller, engineer that had not worked in our department, how we did that. And he said he had no conception it was done that complicated. Most people just see, voila, the finished product. It's done. It's done. So, like I say, you had to learn on the job. You couldn't, pretty much.
How many years were you at Johnston?
19 years.
19
I
years.
started at the very end of Gemini. I think we had some Gemini patches and things coming in. I'm trying to recall back because I was through most of the Apollo landings. And I worked on flight manuals for the shuttle. And after I did leave after 19 years, my first work day at a new company we were helping build, I watched the first landing of the Skylab return. And I was in another office at the time, and I thought, man, that's unbelievable. So I was at the end of Skylab, pretty much. Labs during that era. So
you just said Gemini, and I remember I did an interview with Ken Johnston a few months ago, a very interesting interview. He's such a nice man, lovely man. He showed me some pictures actually from Gemini with what appears to be a UFO flying not very far from Gemini, and that was some of the pictures that he had taken with him home back in the 60s when his chief told him to destroy those pictures or get rid of them, so to speak. And when I am looking in NASA's archive for that specific Gemini picture, I can't find it. I can find
it's a Gemini picture. It's Gemini.
Yeah. And I have to show you this. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I have a picture of that UFO hovering in the background from that mission.
Wow. Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I was coming at the end of the Gemini, starting of the Apollo. I was working in building. I was working off site. I didn't really go on site until later on. After the computers kind of started taking over, I was doing more work in the lab, building the all of the stuff. But I'm not familiar with any of the photographs from Gemini. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. But I know
it's not true. I just don't know.
So I've seen a lot of your videos, and I am amazed at what you can tell. And what I especially liked was the part where you told about you coming into a room where some of the other employees were removing stuff, and this guy is telling you to have a look at that white dot over there. What do you think that is?
Well, that was like I say, I went over to the lab and started working, building those binary slides that go in the control modules that the flight controllers sit at, and it's like shell and shrimp. You had to work your hands like this, just building them, because you had to build hundreds of them. And I do remember I'd take a break, I'd go to another room, or I'd walk around. I was trying to learn everybody's job, and it was because that's how I learned to do what I did, is by seeing what other people were doing or what had been done. Look at what had been done. I walked across the hallway at one point, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure of the timing. I didn't keep a journal. I didn't write down times and dates. I just remember walking across, and that was the photo lab, one of the photo labs from on building 8 that they would bring back video and photographs of the moon and space, whatever.
Yeah.
And I walked across, went in there, and having a secret clearance, I could go in anywhere because I had to deliver things during mission, and you had to have really a secret badge to do that. You couldn't walk around during mission.
No.
So I went into, and it said restricted, but I went in and I'm looking around, and I see this huge table, and it was one technician there. And he said, I was looking at it, I said, oh, what is this? And he said, it's a mosaic. And so I saw several pictures that made up one large picture. And each of those pictures were like maybe 12 by 12. I'm not sure. They were like not very big.
They're stitched together to one piece.
Yeah.
That's the same we see with the gigapan from Mars that my family members also are producing, stitching the pictures together to one big piece.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, but this was a picture of Earth. I saw pine trees, saw clouds, I saw. It was a picture of Earth, and I don't remember looking at the coastline, so I don't know what part of Earth it was, the first one. And this, so I look at him, and he says, "Look at that panel over there," and he pointed, and I looked, and here was this round white dot, and I said, "Oh. Is that a dot on the emulsion?" Because it was a black and white picture, if I remember right. And he said, "White emulsion dots don't leave white shadows on the ground." So I'm looking, and sure enough, there's this white round shadow, and the pine trees are tall, and they're casting the same directional shadow. And I said, "Is this a UFO?" An unidentified flying object. And he says, and he's smiling, I can't tell you that. And like I say, he didn't say no, he didn't say yes.
I was just about to say, he could have, of course, have said no, of course it's not, but he chose to say something.
Yeah, and he's
else.
laughing, he's smiling. He drew my attention, he wanted me to see him.
Yeah.
And so I said, so in other words, he says, I can't tell you that. That told me he's not allowed to talk about UFOs. Here's a picture of it. We got proof. And I looked at him and said, "What are you going to do with this information?" I didn't know how far it went up the scale, you know. No. You know, I didn't know if it was just the techs in the lab seeing this stuff. And he said, we airbrush these out before we sell these photos to the public. So he basically told me it's a cover-up. It's a big cover-up. And so I didn't say any more. But before that happened, I had a downtime period. This is usually between missions. I'd have downtime. I went to learn how to do airbrushing. And the lady, it was an older woman in there, and she had her own little room, her own drafting table. And I'm standing there, and I'm looking at everything, seeing how to do it. And I told her that's what I was in there for. And so she had been working, and then she kind of moves her hand down. And I see this metal barb. It was man-made. It wasn't a natural thing. No. She was covering up on the moon's surface. Okay. And this was probably a flyby. We flew around the moon before we landed on the moon to see if we could get slung back from the moon. There was missions before. Yeah.
From those missions before
right.
Apollo 11. Yeah.
Right. Before we ever landed. Here was this object that was, I don't want to say man-made, but it was not a natural formation. It was an object.
Made by intelligence.
Yeah. It was not a rock that was shaped like, it was a shiny bar that was, and I could tell, and she was going around it with some black opaque. And at the time, this was before the UFO incident in the other lab. And I remember thinking about it. And I remember, because I was so focused. When I'm learning something, I stay focused on what I'm learning. I walked out of there realizing I'd seen something, but I didn't, because nobody had ever told me we were keeping it secret. No. Nobody had ever said anything. So it didn't leap to my mind that it was an alien thing on there. It was just, I walked out of there thinking about it, but I never delve deeper into that thought until this guy's telling me this UFO's covered up.
Did you ever tell it to someone at the time? I know you did later, but at the time, did you talk to somebody else on your work, on your job?
I don't know the time period between the time I said that or saw that or any of this. I know I told my family, my relatives or people, but I remember later, though, not much later, talking to different people. And it's really weird. All my life, I've been interested in the paranormal. All my life, I've had spontaneous, intuitive things happen to me. So I've always been interested in things that are not of the norm, you could say, or the normal things, interest. I had a lot of friends that were into the paranormal. And when I'd start talking to them about it, they just said, oh, yeah. You know, it's like they'd heard all this. They knew a lot more than I did, because up until that point, I'd only studied parapsychology, meditation, a lot of things that I still do, remote viewing or whatever. But I never connected all of it. You know, I was not like into UFOs. I wasn't into aliens. I wasn't into, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think there's a natural progression of my learning, you know. So when I started putting it all together was, I started asking around, and every rumor I heard, we had stuff we found on the moon. There was installations on the dark side of the moon. There was, I started hearing from witnesses when I went to the C-SETI thing directly. I started hearing it directly from them. Every rumor I'd ever heard came to pass. I met a witness that has verified it. Some of these witnesses are pretty high-ranking people. Let's put it that way. Pretty high-ranking, and they know it's secret.
Did they ever mention directly bases, as we know it, on the backside of the moon or at the moon at all, bases of human origin or bases of alien origin?
Definitely alien. That supposedly these installations are not in working, or at least the ones that were filmed or they found were ancient. They're very old.
Do you think we work in collaboration, or NASA work in collaboration with those aliens that actually is present on the moon? It's no secret. I believe there is alien presence on the moon. I believe there is alien presence on Mars and almost every planet with a solid ground to walk on. Do you believe there is some kind of collaboration going on?
I believe that but not with NASA. Here's the deal. NASA is used as a cover.
It's a tool.
A tool. There is another whole group of people that are funded without oversight. They have so much power in this world right now. They're the ones that are working on this. And I'm not talking about aliens now. I'm talking about people within our government. And I think this is kind of worldwide. I know that this, they call it a shadow government here. It's a shadow thing. I think they're connected to a lot of other governments, not just USA. I think they're connected to a lot of different ones.
Yes.
I believe that. Now that is who's keeping it secret. And the only reason I've heard, and I've talked to some people, why secret? Why? Of course, you know, we have technology. We know how to have zero energy from, you know, our environment. We have already the technology to run oil companies out of business, to have free energy, to have all of the free stuff.
We have it for a long time, that's for
exactly,
sure.
Exactly. And right now, we're going to have to go to that, because I truly believe fossil fuels, coal, all of this is ruining our environment. And that's been proven. And these people that are saying it's not, they're being controlled by the media or someone that's trying to make out like this is not a problem and cover it. So there's a lot of covering going on, you know, and I'm glad to see you and other people are aware of this, because right now there are some people in the private sector that I've encountered are working on these types of energies, and they're going to release it to the public. They're going to bypass all this blocks, and I'm hoping that nothing will happen to them. Let's put it that way, because usually something happens to people like that, and I'm not ever going to mention their name, because I would never, you know, I don't out people. I don't do that.
Of course not. But let's see it like this. If you went back to the 50s or 60s, it was a limited amount of people who had the knowledge about what's going on. If they started speaking, you could just simply remove them. Their car went off the road, brakes stopped working, whatever, remove them from the surface. But today, when someone speaks, it's not a few hundred or maybe 1,000 people that nobody would notice would be missing. It's thousands of, it's millions of people who sits around somewhere on this planet, having this knowledge, and you cannot remove so many people. So Donna, what do you think the strategy would be from shadow governments?
From this, what we're doing now.
Yes,
we're talking.
They cannot go out kill me. They cannot go out kill you. That would be too obvious. What do you think their strategy would be? Would they just ignore us, or?
Yeah, they've been trying to do that for sure. I think if you have, if you're a general or if you're someone of authority and you want to come out, you might get killed. It might be an accidental car wreck or hit and run, or
the higher rank you have, the more you become
so.
in a danger zone, of course.
Well, for me, I don't tell anybody this, but let's put it this way. I went in CSETI mainly, and Dr. Greer said this, because once you ring the bell and you get your stuff out there, your testimony and everything, then it's done. Until I went in CSETI and let it be known to the public what I'd experienced, it was scary. It was like I had two guys come and tell me I need to keep it quiet. I need to not talk about these things.
What was that?
They were spooks. And I wasn't worried so much. I don't know, maybe I'm a fool, but I just, for some reason, I guess they discounted me as a woman without a degree, a worker bee at NASA. Who's going to believe me? That's where they went wrong. Because most of the people in the world are like that. They're worker bees. They're not in high authority. They're not. That's where they missed out. I slipped through the cracks. Because I think somebody's more willing to believe my experience than someone that's trying to do something out there. I don't know. Maybe as much, or I don't know. But I'm more like everyday people. You know, I had to work. I've had to work. I've had to do things, everything that everybody else does. You know, it was never given to me. Yeah. So that's where they made a mistake. But granted, since then, I've had one experience that God protected me from it. And let's put it this way. You never know. You never know. I'm going to do as many interviews as I can. I want people to share their information. I think things like you're doing right now, getting people to talk to you, you share it. It's what is important, my opinion is, to overcome the shadow government is what we're doing, plus all these people that are out there that are intelligent people, may not be degreed. I don't care. They're smart and they can figure things out. Everybody gets out there and creates this stuff, figures it out, and then shares it freely. Once you start giving it away,
the rest will come.
And there's no way it can be stopped. But if you try to copyright it, like Dr. Greer's done several times, that's when you get in trouble. They stop it. They buy it or they stop it. They kill the person. They kill the inventor. They wrap up everything that they got. But if it's going to have to be a magnanimous person that invents it and then gives it freely, it's the only way they'll survive and get it out there. The only way.
I would love to ask you a question. Have you ever seen a UFO yourself, real time, real life?
Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, I want to share this with you because I've seen photographs. Of course, I've seen all the videos everybody else has seen. When I was 26 years old, I had an encounter with two men I believe were extraterrestrial, but they looked humanoid. That was something else. When I was 26, I had volunteer work at the VA hospital, Veterans Hospital, and I was modeling, believe it or not. And I met these two guys at a car show, and this is before I was into UFOs or anything like that, or even aware of it. Yeah. I was still into parapsychology because I'd had spontaneous psychic experiences. Well, I'm doing this modeling car show at the car show, and I feel somebody looking at me. Now that's weird when you can actually feel somebody looking at you, because I'm standing there, I'm showing the car, the dots, you know, you gotta be fakey and do all this stuff. Anyway, he walks up to me and he wants to know if I'm gonna be there the next night. So I said yes. So he brings this other guy back the next night. Now these guys are both wearing suits. My
black suits, like
regular suits, you know, like a black suit. One was in a black suit, black tie, white shirt, black t-shirt.
My first thought is of course the men in black when you're saying.
Yeah, they try to make fun of that, but some of them are or were. I don't know if they still do that, but yeah, this guy. I noticed him when I looked up. He was staring at me, and he had a black umbrella in his hand and a black attaché case in his other hand. And he walks up to me and he asked me if I'm going to be there the next night, and I said yes. So he leaves. Now you got to remember though, Thomas, this is summer, Houston, 100 degrees. You don't wear suits outside to go to a car show. You don't do that. Nope. All right. Well, anyway, he comes with this other guy the next night he's got reddish hair, reddish brown hair, and he's wearing what you call a shark skin suit. Have you ever seen one of those? It's shiny. It's shiny. Shiny, silvery, kind of. And he's wearing this weird tie tack, mood ring type tie tack. And he walks up beside me. And he gets really close to me. He gets right in my space. And I'm really feeling uncomfortable because I don't know. Everybody feels uncomfortable if somebody comes up nose to nose with you or that close. And
if you already are sensitive already.
But when these guys walking up, I heard them talking about my bone structure. I've had plastic surgery, so I look quite a bit different than I do now. But I had like high cheekbones. I looked like an American Indian, only blonde and blue-eyed American Indian, you know, with just high cheekbones and all that. But they were talking about my bone structure, and then this little guy's over here looking at me, and I'm, you know, trying to be nice and present things. And so the minute I'm starting to feel uncomfortable with him so close, the guy standing in the black suit was standing in a comfortable way away. He just gazes at him, looks at him, and then the guy moves away from me. It's almost like he's sending something telepathically.
He said, "Go away, you're making her."
Yeah, you're too close or something, because I felt really uncomfortable. And so anyway, they start talking to me about how would I like to be the first woman in space, go on behind the moon and all this stuff. And I'm going, no, I'm married and I have a little boy. Again, I'm thinking, these guys don't know social manners. A woman's not going to go off with two weird strangers. You know, they don't even know that I wouldn't do that. But anyways, I said, no, I have a little boy and I'm married and I don't want to leave at this time. And I'm thinking, whatever, really? So anyway, they start, but this guy is always, he's looking at me and he's like, he's found a Bigfoot. He's found a Bigfoot. He is totally excited. You know, it's like, I'm going, oh my God, this is weird. So I'm thinking the guy in the black suit was very contained. He was acting normal. And I said, well, what do these beings look like? And because I decided to ask them questions if they were, because I knew they weren't from around here or something. If they were serious, I wanted to find out what they were. So I said, what do these beings look like? He said, well, some are humanoid, just like us. Some have hair all over their body with a slit for a mouth. And he's going into all these different ones. And I said, well, how do they communicate? How do you call them in or communicate? He says, well, we go down to Corpus Christi and we hold hands and we mentally call them in from the water. They come out of the water. And he said, if you're afraid, they can't communicate with you. They communicate psychically. And I'm going, okay. Well, I'd already had psychic experiences. So that kind of wasn't new to me or non-believable because mine were not all the time, but I would have spontaneous experiences that were pretty far out. So anyway, I asked all the questions I could. How could I travel in space for such long distances? And the guy started, the little one, he's all giving me all this information. And He said, well, they take this like large hypo. And I remember I flashback in the 50s. I was like 10 years old. Horses were found dead with a white powder injected in the rectum. And he was saying this hypo filled with white powdery stuff. And the taller guy stopped him. He said, look, stop. He hit him under the arm with his briefcase. He didn't let go of that briefcase. And so he's, don't tell her that. Well, immediately I'm going, I already knew about the horses and stuff. And so I guess he didn't want to frighten me to the point. So I said, well, how do you guys know so much about this subject? And he said, well, we're investigators and we investigate this sort of thing. And so the little one's giving me a phone number. Now the big one was always just kind of standing there with the stuff. But he hands me it, and I'm looking into his mood ring tie tag, and it was like, I felt kind of hypnotized, kind of numbed. I took the phone number. The next day I called it, and the little one answered the phone. He wouldn't let me talk. He said, listen, there was no sound on the line, just dead silence. Well, before they left this was at the Astrodome for the new car show. Before they both left me, the man in the black suit, they're both walking off, and then the man in the black suit comes back and he says, remember this, you create with what you say. He said that to me. You create with what you say. And I already knew metaphysics. You create your reality through your thinking. I'd already studied the principles, certain principles that I was just using and already knew about. So a lot of things they were telling me, I could understand and I could connect, but at the same time, it was weird. It was a very weird situation, you know. Anyway, after I called the guy the next day, no sign. It was dead silence, no sound on the phone or anything. I thought, okay. I tore up the number, wind flushed it, went on about my business, but then whammo. Oh my God, I started having dreams. I mean, I was flooded with psychic experiences. I started, anything I'd say, I'd get it. I mean, like, my husband's birthday, and I needed about 20 for a birthday gift for him. And I think, I wish I had $20, you know. Bammo, I get a check for $20 in a checking account that I know I closed down a year or two before that had no money in it. I get this check. Banks don't even do that. You have to show who you are. And I just get checks. I get this or I get that. I mean, it was getting overwhelmingly weirder and weirder. I became more and more interested in parapsychology. And I was having dreams that would come true. I was having phenomenal experiences. I don't think I told too many people because they were so unbelievable even to me that it sounded crazy. I even knew it sounded crazy. So my interest was in parapsychology, and the strange thing was I didn't get into the UFO thing then, or the ET thing then. No. But I had read every book in every library, and one other little thing that happened that was so cool, I became a speed reader. I didn't even realize I became a speed reader. I used to read normal pace, maybe slow, get tired, my eyes dark. I was just whipping through everything, every book I could find, everything. I was just a phenomenal reader. So I came across this one book called The Mothman Prophecies, and this was 9 years after this. And the Mothman, and this is before my stuff at becoming aware of it at NASA, I think, because I remember reading the Mothman Prophecies, and in that, the guy said that beings that would encounter guys in black, their distinguishing feature was they had long fingers. Well, here was this guy in black holding an attaché case and an umbrella, never let him out of his hand. He was hiding his fingers.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. See? Then I'm reading this and I'm going, and the people that have encountered them get a very strange call from them. Well, I call them. And it's usually static on the line. And these people, after they get this call, become very intuitive. Well, this happened to me. I didn't even realize it until 9 years later when I'm reading this book. And by the way, my dad saw that bird, that big bird that's in the Mothman. It flew over Houston. My dad walked in the house. I didn't see it, but he did. My dad saw it and flew over our house, and he come in white as a sheet and said, I saw the biggest bird. And in the book, it talked about it in 60, I think it was 63. Yeah. But anyway, to show you how things had connected all the way around, all right, then I realized at that point, oh my gosh, this heightened ability was due to that call or whatever, you know. So I went on about my business. I started realizing and understanding that these beings communicate through our thinking. I think that they can manipulate our thinking, which I don't think they tried. I don't think they do that because they asked me to go with them, and I said no. So they could have just as easily made me say yes, probably.
I think we're all protected somehow in what we call universal laws.
Yes,
of
yes.
course, someone will always violate them, but in general, most
observing
from outside,
you know,
here is just observing and following those universal laws.
Right. Well, I hear Roddenberry had already gotten his information. Roddenberry, you've heard of him? He's written, I believe, the Star Trek and Roddenberry. Yeah. You know, their whole thing is not to interfere in other societies. They kind of got that from somebody else, but supposedly. So, but anyway, after this happened, I never saw a UFO, okay, except the few times I went on Dr. Greer's trips. Dr. Greer uses the same thing that these guys were telling me how to communicate with them. And that was the whole reason I went on one of those Dr. Greer's trips, is because I'd already gotten that same information from ET guys that knew how to communicate with extraterrestrials. That's through the mind and remote viewing and all of that. You know, it's really kind of spacey and far out, and I understand that, but it works. Once you do it, you know it works. And you don't have
where I come from in Denmark, it's just called CE5 when you are trying to connect with extraterrestrial life in your universe, sending your thoughts out to them and waiting for a reply. And we have these special days where it's supposed to be the best days to do these things. We have annual days once a month where it's annual what you call it, CE5 days, where people go out in groups. Actually, I was one of the co-founder of CE5 Denmark back then when we founded it. But Denmark is a little country, so we have a very minimum of members, and we haven't been very active lately, unfortunately. But maybe.
Well, let me tell you about that. The beings told me that's how you do it. Exactly what the CE5 does. The CE5 protocol is what Dr. Greer utilizes. I don't know. I think I think he got it from ETs. He's met with ETs before too. So anyway, but let me tell you the secret behind the CE5. This is your intentions. If your intention is to just get their information and use it for negative stuff, you've got to have the right intention.
Then you won't connect with them.
If
your intentions are to bring a camera so I can show the whole world what this is about.
Well, that's okay too. It's okay to do that.
I'm not sure I can agree quite on that, because we had some experiences with people that came with camera because they believed that now they should gain pictures that they could show to the rest of their friends and say, see what we found. But I don't think that was the extraterrestrials' intention to be a kind of photo model for some people running around down on planet Earth that wants to show the pictures. I think there was another agenda at that time. But back to you.
Yeah, I don't know. Now, but see, if you believe that, you're coming under that guideline. I know Mr. Myers out there in Switzerland, he took a lot of good pictures. His intent, and it was for that group, the Pleiadians, wanted it out. But to get back to, that's what I've heard. So, but to get back on, you'd asked me if I'd ever seen a UFO. Yeah. I'd seen probes coming out of the mountain. We saw craft in the sky that lit up. And you know, that was a question I was asking. I sent that thought out there. I said, okay, guys, you know, I'm sending you this thought. I have seen pictures. I have gone out there and talked about you guys. I have seen orbs. I've seen things from afar. Why can't I see a craft up close and personal? And let me tell you what happened. Swear to God. During Ike, we had to evacuate Houston. I had to go down I-45. It was bumper to bumper. There was a bus that burned. It was horrible. There was so much rioting. I became so frightened. I went blind. I lost my eyesight. It was so scary. I was scared of the people. The people were doing things. They were robbing and looting and doing all kinds of things. I had 2 huge dogs with me, black labs, very protective. They saved me. On one occasion, some guys were coming up to the car. Well, I was so scared, and a police officer helped me. We couldn't move. We were blocked in, barricaded. He helped me go across the barricade and go down and park in a parking lot. So I'm in my car, and my dogs are sitting, staring at me. So, you know, just looking. And I look up through my windshield. This was like 2 o'clock in the morning. 2 o'clock. Everybody was asleep outside. I look up, Thomas. I saw the biggest UFO, triangular shape. It was triangular. It was just above me, about as high as a telephone pole. It was so close, and not even a sound. And I'm looking up there. I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
What was your first thought?
Well, my first thought was, it's a UFO. I mean, you know, I knew it wasn't from around here. I knew we didn't have the technology to not make a sound with something hovering. But my first thought was to look at it. It was a beautiful triangle-shaped, ultra blue light underneath it. And when I looked at it, and then this voice, and by the way, it was the voice of the man that was wearing the black that I'd met years before. In my head, it was his voice in my head. I recognized his voice. And he said, everything's going to be fine. You're going to be okay. He said, and I just immediately got calm. I just was okay. And he said, go. Basically, he let me know all along that highway, all of the hotels were full. From our people from New Orleans were, you know, there. They were filled up. Everybody was full. No vacancies, nowhere. And he said, he said, everything's going to be okay. And I calmed down. And I'm looking up at the craft, and that triangle turns into a Star of David. I mean, it just like a Star of David. Now, I don't know what the significance was, but it was like 2 triangles flipped on top of each other. And it's turning really slow.
Yeah.
It's turning really slow. And so I'm looking at that, and I guess you could say I was like a deer in the headlights. I had cameras, I had guns, I had everything there.
But you were staring
at them, but I didn't even want to shoot at the people that were trying to pull me out of my car and rob me or whatever they were going to do. I mean, I didn't even think of my gun being in a glove box. I was just, you know, I was in awe. And so my dogs were very quiet. They didn't do anything. And I immediately, basically, they told me to go to that hotel. On the sign outside said, no vacancies. I had 3 dogs. I had 2 big black labs and 1 in a little carrier, a little bitty one. And I go in there, I have my black labs on the chains, and they're really pulling me hard. They're really big dogs. They were like horses. They saved my life, though, that night. Anyway, I go in there. Here's this huge sign on the guy that checks you in. It's already said no vacancies, and then this sign says no dogs. And here I have 2 on chains, and I'm drenched wet because it started raining. I look like a drowned rat. And I said, "Sir, can I have a room?" He looks at me, and I want to tell you, Thomas, the man had the most hateful look. He looked like I wouldn't have even talked to him, even it said vacancies and dogs allowed, because he looked so angry, and I said, he just wasn't the type of person you want to talk to. And I said, "Do you have a room?" And he looked at me, he says, "Yes." And I'm like, oh my God, what did those guys upstairs do? They told him, "Give her a room or not," So he says, "Well, you'll have to clean the room because we don't have our maids didn't get to come in." So that's fine. Just give me clean sheets.
I don't was during the Hurricane Ike.
Yes. Well, it missed us, but we didn't know that at the time. But we did get a lot of rain, torrential rain from it. But I go in there. I can't believe. I said, "By the way, I have 3 dogs. I have more than 2. He says, "Okay." He's letting me have a room. All right. He says, "Okay." So I get the room, get in there. These 2 dogs, they're huge. They're like horses. They were huge. Ponies. And they're strong. I mean, really strong. Anyway, they proceeded to tear that room up. I'd tie one on to the coat rack that was glued to the wall, stuck to the wall, and take one downstairs because I couldn't handle 2 at once. And that male dog just ripped everything off the wall. I'm glad I didn't tie him to the plumbing that it ripped out. So I'm going, oh my God, I'm going to have to pay for all of this. I better let him know. Anyway, as I'm there, I met so many cool people from New Orleans. I met one man. It was so cool because I had an opportunity to meet people that I normally don't get to meet. The segregation is not as bad as it used to be, but it's still, I got to work with Black people, but usually you live in your own little areas, But anyway, I met this man. He was an older man, and I'm talking to him, older man from New Orleans, and I'm talking to him, and I was talking to him about how what is the guys that go out real quick? Oh, when there's storm.
Storm chasers.
Yeah, they're. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I forgot this. But anyway, I was talking to him about how these people didn't wait to get commanded to go out and start saving people in New Orleans from drowning. Coast Guard.
Oh, yeah,
Those Coast Guard people were out there immediately helping people, rescuing people off. I mean, they didn't wait to be commanded to go. That was their job, but still it was dangerous work. And I was talking to him about all this, and the people were so kind and so loving. I mean, they were giving me food. They were giving me help. I met one person, a couple next to me. They raised Black lads. He took over my lads, was training them to come. I mean, it was like every problem I had, somebody there was helping me with it, that was an expert. The man that I talked to that was Black from New Orleans, I think he was a voodoo man because it was so weird because when I came out the next day, we'd sat in front of my car in the parking lot, and there was little X's put all up and down my bumper on the front. That's to protect you from evil spirits. Recently, those X's wore off, and I had a wreck. So I don't know. Maybe it's a belief that that's true, but yeah, I need to get him to put some more X's on my car. But anyway, I found that I met so many cool people that I wouldn't have had the opportunity not to. And so I not only got a place to stay, it was more than that. Now, these beings, they turned and they slowly went off. The only thing I can think of is when I'm very, very frightened, like I'm going to die, I must send off some kind of signal. because those guys were here. That's the only thing I can think of, because I really thought I was going to die that night. There was so many criminals out and around. They finally got out there with machine guns and, you know, the people, the army. But people, you know what, Thomas, that was never written up in the papers. They did not talk about the riots. They didn't talk about how scary it was out there. I mean, this is how the cover-up is. Not only about UFOs, but everything. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, Americans are very dumb. It's because the media is only there to sway public opinion. It's no longer
stuff about
factual.
celebrities and what cars politicians are driving in, and if one of them parked on a handicap spot parking lot instead, you know, stuff like that. Typical medias, you know. Nothing of the
Well,
real
it's
stuff.
not even typical. It's like, it's to sway public opinion. It is a machine now.
When we are talking about media, I don't know how much you're into 9/11, but again, there we have the official explanation of what was going on. 2 craft hits 2 towers and 3 buildings collapse, and people still believe in that because that's what the media said. And nobody is actually, of course someone is, but the main majority of people is not listening to those facts that are being broadcasted on alternative medias like YouTube, like Facebook, Twitter, or people that actually had some educations to bring with them on their investigations, or to that group of 9/11 researchers that count more than 2,000 people with scientific background that also said that was not what happened, guys. 2 planes can't take down 3 buildings. And that's what I was thinking of when we are talking about the media covering up everything, shadow government telling or putting out an agenda for what to bring in the media and how to bring it. So it's not easy.
And I agree. I think to some extent, because there are times I've seen real-time news. Real time. It's going on. And the next day, it's all different. I mean, and I'll give you an example. Recently, there was a shooting in California. This guy walks in and shoots everybody at his business and everything like that. Well, they gunned the woman and the man down, and there was a third one that got out of the car running. Now, I'm watching real-time news. I like to watch real-time news because it's not cleaned. They had the cop was saying he's taken off his gear. It's not bulletproof vest. It's just regular gear. We got him. We caught him. They caught him live. One of those 3 guys live. Now, after that guy's disappeared off the face of the earth. I'm sure they took him and tortured the snot out of him, questioning to get information, and they couldn't very well say they had him. The next day, they didn't have him. There was like nothing about that. Nothing about what I heard over the police scanners during real-time news. So there was changed right there. Now, granted, I'm not for torturing people, but I am for getting information that would stop other people from doing harm. So, you know, but what I'm saying is, real-time information is different sometimes. It's cleaned and given out to the public after the fact. Now, as far as 9/11, I'll be honest with you. At the time that happened, I was teaching my kids, my students, and my aide, she liked to watch the news or TV at her desk, and she had her little headsets on. And she called my attention to the first plane hitting the tower. This was live. I saw both planes hit it. And I told the kids, this is a learning moment. This is a day in history you've got to remember. So I allowed them to watch. And I saw that building collapse. It was real time. the planes hit it at a very vulnerable spot. High enough up so the weight can collapse it. Hot enough, because some of these planes took right off, fully fueled, heavy fuel. So it happened. It really happened. But the reason it happened, they had already tried. The Middle East people had already tried to take that down. You know, there was bombs found down underneath it, and it was stopped. The Clinton administration, during that time, they caught them. They stopped it. The reason the towers got it, that the Middle East people hate Jewish people. And the towers was one of their biggest people. That was the area where they did a lot of the trading and money of the Jewish people. From, I think it was some kind of Jewish center for funding or whatever. So what I'm saying is they got the towers because of that. Now, the rest of them, there was a plane shot down that had American citizens on it that was headed for, I think, the White House.
Yeah.
We shot that down ourselves. Now, that didn't come out until recently. You know? That didn't come out.
I remember I heard of the third or fourth plane that was taken down somewhere, and then I didn't hear any more about it at all. But I remember the news. They talked about the two planes hitting World Trade Center. They talked about the plane, alleged plane hitting Pentagon, and then they talked about plane number 4 that they has taken down somewhere. I can't remember.
Philadelphia, I think it was. But that one, okay, the plane hit the Pentagon. That one it did do. This plane that we shot down, and at the time, it was headed for the White House. And that was that whole show about the guy, the slogan, "Let's roll." You know, he was going to talk about they were trying to overpower the criminals. And supposedly the terrorist planted it into the ground. But what people don't realize, and I'm not an authority on bombs and things, but let me tell you something. They showed where that plane went down. There was no part of that plane that was bigger than this big. I mean, it was blown from the inside out. I mean, the bomb went in and blew that plane up. We shot our own plane down. And that was not made public until sometime much, much later that we had to shoot that plane down. It's because it was going for the White House or some other building, you know. So that's what, I guess I'm telling you all this because this is how things are morphed, into the way they want their PR out. I mean, it's like this. There is so much reasons behind the real reasons, and it boils down to money, economics, power over other countries. Yeah, it's all it boils down to. You follow the money. That's where it goes, and that's what all of this is about. And except these extremists, they've been brainwashed into thinking they're doing God's work. And I mean, it's sad, but it's sad, but there's crazies in the world. I mean, you know, a lot of crazies
everywhere. That's just the fact that we cannot come across.
Yeah, and it's sad. It's sad because I don't know.
There's nothing we can do about it. We can't fight it. It's a part. I won't say it's a part of us, but it's a part of our world. Where there's good, there is bad. Where there's bad, there is good. And the old quote is saying there's nothing good without something being bad. I don't know if I'm quite agree, but I remember the old quote, and that's the way it goes on our little planet. There are good people, there are bad people, and we cannot remove one part and still have yin and yang, so to speak.
Yeah. But you know, we can create our own reality. We can create a reality of good or evil, you know? And I think that when we hate people for this belief, then we're creating the negativity along with them. But I think through our own thinking, we can stop it. We can control at least our actions. I personally think that everybody has a right to believe the way they want. as long as it doesn't interfere in another individual's belief or life. If my belief will harm you, then I shouldn't express it outward because it's harming someone else. But if they were to go out, if all these people believe that death and violence is a way to go to heaven, then, and they truly believe it, they need to just go out and get a big bomb and all blow themselves up. You know, and blow them up. Blow themselves up.
With
they do it.
That was not
they
the way
do.
to do it.
They believe
you know.
blowing themselves up, they're going to go to heaven. Seriously. Do it. But if you include somebody else in your belief system, that's wrong. That's not
I think
right.
it's also important. Now we are talking. We just sort of got away from NASA and UFOs, but doesn't matter. Now that we are talking about 9/11, religions, Christianity, Islam, it's important for me. It's very important to say if someone that is a Christian commit a crime, kill people, or someone that is Jewish or someone that is Muslim commit a crime or kill people, that person does not represent the rest of his religion. They only represent themselves, and that's something many people forget, and that could be one of the main reasons, besides money, power and oil, to why we have all these conflicts on our planet. If we could remember this, that because you have one specific color skin, you don't represent the rest with your what you're doing, acts.
That's right.
Make the world a better place to be. Look at it with realistic eyes. Love each other.
Exactly.
Spread the love across religions. That's the way to make the world a better place to be. Donna, we have been speaking here for more than an hour now.
Oh, cool.
And we came across some very interesting topics, if you ask me. And I would love to talk to you again another time about UFO and aliens, because I think you have a lot to tell, and I think we could spend hours together talking.
Definitely.
I have some experiences too I would love to share with you also, probably most in private, not on live for now, but there is a lot of things that we couldn't discuss. I also have a huge paranormal interest, and I have a lot of experience since childhood also, both with paranormal experiences, UFOs, and with aliens. That is no secret. Donna, thank you.
Thank you,
Thomas, for taking your time to be in 15 minutes that now became 1 hour instead with Mars Moon Space TV.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I hope to see you again soon.
Well, bye-bye.
Yeah.
And say, keep loving.
Keep the love floating out there.
Yes.
All right? Yes.
You bet. Bye from Texas.